Good morning, everyone. Welcome to video 7 in our series, The Real Talk, an explanation of God and sex. Today, we are going to dive into one of the last phrases that we are coining to be part of the typical talk, right? Where we are told to avoid sex outside of marriage or before marriage because of pregnancy and STDs, or to use protection if we can't, right? And so we're gonna pick that apart, and I'm gonna look at my notes a lot because there's so many good things to share with you. So if I'm looking down, you know why. But I want to start by sharing that first off, the truth is sex is powerful. It is very powerful. It unites two into one in a very physical way, and it's very powerful. And so some other examples we can talk about, like any power, that can be used for good or for bad. It can build up or it can tear down. One would be like a boss, right? We can have an amazing boss, one who sees our potential, one who builds us up, one who encourages us, one who inspires us to be the best person we can be, one who, challenges us and invites us to grow each and every day. Or we can have a boss who uses their power to tear us down, or to manipulate, or to use and to cause us to feel less than or unworthy. So a boss could, that's a powerful thing that can go for good or for bad. But that doesn't make being a boss bad, right? It just means what you do with it could go either way. Another example would be government, right? Government is a very important thing, and it's a powerful thing, and it can build up countries, communities. It can cause us to be very strong and united, or it can tear us apart. It can dominate its people, and it can use its power for bad. Nuclear power is an example where that fuel energy can be used for so many good things, and it can also kill a lot of people. A romantic relationship is very powerful. It can be used to provide love and security for two people, to build them up, or it can tear them down, be abusive and useful or using of each other. Free will is a very powerful thing. It can be something that we use to choose God, to choose life, to choose love, or we can choose selfish things, choose death, choose evil. So all these are examples of how different things are powerful, and they can go either direction. And sex is no different in the fact that it's very, very powerful. It can unite, again, I'm looking at my notes because there's so many good things to share. It can unite a man and a woman like nothing else can. And it can create new life, literally, with a human being. Or it can degrade, it can dishonor, it can disrespect each other, it can use each other for our own benefit. It can be a selfless love where we give of ourselves, like we talked of free, total, faithful, fruitful, or it can be quite the opposite, and it can be objectifying the other person, using them for our own pleasure and for our own happiness, or it's not going to end up. Anyway, I'm going to leave that, keep moving. And even more so, sex is powerful because our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so what we do with our bodies matters. What we do with our bodies matters. There's no such thing as sex without strings attached. It's just not an option because sex is powerful. And while STDs and pregnancy are very real potential results of sex and things to be aware of, I think maybe when we were taught those, it was kind of used as a fear tactic sometimes, but I don't know that was ever, meant in a negative way as much as it was maybe the way people were trying to teach us that sex is something to respect, something to know that it is powerful, not something that it has no strings attached. It has major strings attached. I remember in high school, we had a classmate who, I think it was my junior year, she got pregnant. And I remember there were condemning glances and judgmental comments as pretty much her only company. And myself included, unfortunately, I hate to admit it, and I've had to go to confession about it, where she was socially rejected. And this just breaks my heart because how many of us were, experiencing sexual intimacy with different people, and just because there wasn't the evidence of the power of it and we didn't get caught, right? It was okay. But as soon as somebody got caught, then all of a sudden it was something that was horrible in our world's eyes, in our class's eyes. And I think that's a great, like, tiny example of how we are as a culture right now, where it's like, oh yeah, it's something that is, we just have casually. And yet then when there's evidence of it being powerful, and especially outside of marriage, then it becomes this really shunned thing. And that just breaks my heart, because it's such a hypocritical approach, such a hypocritical environment that we're in, that we often will accept and even encourage sex outside of God's design until there's evidence of its power. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's not good, right? I think we're getting better about that as a culture, but it's a very hypocritical culture that we're in. And so rather than fearing the potential or the definite power of sex, maybe we're invited to respect it, right? Rather than these fear tactics, maybe it's looking at it more of looking at the awe and wonder of the power of sex and how beautiful it can be, and respecting it in that way. So I want to pull out a verse from 1 Corinthians, starting at 6:18, chapter 6, verse 18. Now this is from the New Living Translation, and then I'll read the New Revised Standard Version, because as we learn, reading different versions of the Bible, you can kind of pick out some different definitions of words, and helps you really wrap your head around what's exactly going on. So in the New Living Translation, it says, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18, "Run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does." And the New Revised Standard Version says, "Shun fornication. Every sin that a person commits is outside the body, but the fornicator sins against the body itself." Now, I looked up what fornication means according to Merriam-Webster. She's a great resource. And of course, she has her limitations. But she, let's see, I'm going to make sure I get this right, said that it means consensual sexual intercourse between two persons not married to each other. Now, we also know that Merriam-Webster has her limitations, because based on the conversation we've had thus far, we know now that it's more than just being married that makes it according to God's design. It also is sex that is an act of mutual self-gift and openness to life. It's free, total, faithful, fruitful, and it starts within that foundation of commitment, of that total commitment of marriage, right? So that's what fornication means. It means consensual sexual intercourse between two persons outside of marriage, or we'll say outside of God's design for sex. Now, those verses go on to say, "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, which you have from God, and that you are not your own? For you were bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body." That's so beautiful. Again, I'll read it from the top. "Run from sexual sin. No other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, which you have from God, and you are not your own? For you were bought with a price, therefore glorify God with your body." What was the price? The price was God's Son, was Jesus Christ, came to pay for us, to redeem us, and therefore we are not our own. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You see, we are made in God's image and in His likeness, and thus we reflect His love. And so it's no surprise that we are the temple of the Holy Spirit. What does that mean? We are the indwelling. The Holy Spirit lives within us. And so what we do with our bodies, it absolutely matters. And our bodies are powerful vessels of God's love. Again, can be used for, either way, good or bad, powerful nonetheless. So I'm going to consult my notes again, making sure I'm not missing anything here. It's interesting, that the Bible forewarns us, our bodies, what we do with our bodies impacts us so much that the Bible forewarns us to run from sexual sin. Not just like, hey, casually avoid it, or maybe you should, just try to use protection if you can't wait. Like, no, it's saying run. Why? Not because it's trying to put these limitations on you. No, but because it's trying to, God is trying to help us protect ourselves from the power that sex can have in a very degrading way if it's not within his design. And he knows that if it is according to his design, how beautiful it is, how life-giving it is, how wonderful it is, and he doesn't want us to settle for anything less. It says no other sin so clearly affects the body as this one does. Keep in mind, it doesn't say don't have sex. It simply says run from sexual sin. The Bible's not saying sex is bad. No. It's not saying pregnancy is bad. Not at all. No. It's not using, it's trying to help us understand the power of sex, the beauty of sex, and therefore glorify God with our bodies. So then it begs the question, well, how do we know if this is within God's design? How do we know if the way we use our bodies is within God's design? And we've touched on this before, that it's free, total, faithful, fruitful. And we can hold that up against anything we do and know very quickly if something is within going to be something that's life-giving or if it's going to be degrading. If it's going to be used, this power is going to be used for good, or if it's going to bring us down or the people around us down. The Catechism actually explains it and says, sexual pleasure is morally disordered when it's sought for itself, isolated from its procreative, or what we're calling open to life, and unitive purposes, what we're calling a mutual self-gift, right? So when it's a selfish thing, something that we're doing for our own pleasure and not in consideration of the other person, when it is something that we aren't totally giving of ourselves to the other person as a gift, which again has that bedrock foundation in marriage where we're giving of ourselves totally, something that is not free, where we both parties, male and female, are fully in agreement that this is a good thing. So free, total, faithful, where we are fully committed to each other and completely, I give all of me to you, you give all of you to me. And fruitful, where we are open to the new life that creates, where two bodies become one and we become a new life as a unit together, and the potential of children as well. So marriage is the foundation of it, but as we already have discussed, it is not the end of it. It's the foundation, right? And so going back to our original question, should pregnancy and STDs be reasons to avoid sex outside of marriage? Look, I think that is missing the point. And the point is that sex is powerful and it can go either direction, power very, very good, or power very, very degrading and power in the wrong direction. And so it gives us the opportunity, as we are learning more about God's design for our bodies and sharing that potentially with our children or whomever has been entrusted to us, that it's not about this fear tactic of avoiding sex. It's about this invitation to something so much greater, something so much more beautiful, and you don't want to settle yourself for something less than what God is inviting us to. God is inviting us to experience this unity with another person that can reflect his love with each other. And anything less than that is going to leave us feeling, we're going to know it's less than that, even if we can't put words to it. And so as we kind of conclude walking through the typical talk that we've heard, it's really reorienting some of the verbiage and reorienting it to an invitation instead of a fear of like, we need to be afraid of the repercussions, you could say, of sex. Instead, we should and could and are invited to embrace the beauty of it and pursue it in its fullness of what it was meant to be. And that is just incredible to know that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and that what we do with our bodies matters, because when we give of ourselves or we take from someone else, we are uniting ourselves with them in a very, very powerful way. And are we going to choose to do that in a way that is going to be beautiful and incredible and even holy, dare I say, or we can choose to use that in the opposite. So with that, our video number 8 will kind of wrap a bow around all that we've discussed. And then video number 9, we're going to dive right into what we think God would say if he were to sit us down and share his perspective on the design behind sex. Until then, I'll see you later.